Okay. Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, 3 Tips for Women in Leadership, Powerful Communications and Presentations. Today's presenter is Allison Horak. For your convenience, the slide deck for today's presentation will be available on the CPS HR Consulting website. Please visit cpshr.us to download. The session is also being recorded, and we will post a link to the recording on the same page of our website as soon as it's available. In order to ensure a high-quality recording, all attendees are encouraged to mute your microphones. If you have any questions for Allison, please enter them in the Q&A or chat panels on the right-hand side of your screen. And now, let's get started.
Cool. Thanks, Angelique. Appreciate it. I'm Allison. I'm the instructor. We've got 30 minutes, so we're going to jump right in and get started here. So I will be asking in our 30 minutes for some interaction from you if you choose to. So my preference is that you use the chat for that, just so we can all kind of monitor it easily and it's all in one place. So let's start that way. I'd like you to think back and share your experience. And so when you think back on your work life, no matter what your age is, where you've worked, whatever, what have been some of your challenges with communication and presenting, especially through the lens of being a woman in business? That's what I'd like to capture. So I know you're probably kind of filtering through a lot of different ideas now, but thinking about what have been some challenges, if you're comfortable sharing, with presenting or communicating. It can be in general or more specifically, like as a woman in business, here are some things that I've had some issues with or whatever. So I'll give you a moment to think about that and throw it up in the chat. I'm not seeing anything yet. Maybe you're like, whoa, lady, it's only 30 minutes. We didn't know there was going to be a test. Okay, it's not a test. We've got some ideas coming in now. Okay, culture, interesting. Feeling nervous and intimidated before giving a presentation. Yeah, good. Thanks. And if you're thinking and typing, please continue and put it up in there. I was new to presenting when I started 8 years ago. I found it challenging, but I like it now. Okay, awesome. Thanks. And I'm sure there are other experiences out there. So I want to share in the day-long version of this course, this is the agenda that we cover. We talk about what are some strategies for talking to other people about their performance. That can be a little intimidating and uncomfortable, especially if we have to talk to someone about poor performance or the need for performance improvement. Also, preparing for and running meetings. That may seem kind of like, who can't run a meeting? But of course, there are some skills involved in that. And so we talk about that in the day-long course. We also cover delegating, how to say no, set some boundaries at work, how to disagree with colleagues and maintain your relationship with the person, and then how to present powerfully. And so in our 30 minutes today, of course, we're not going to cover all 6 of those topics. That would be impossible. But where I'm going to focus are on the 2 things that I just made a different color there. Preparing for and running meetings, I'm going to focus on one part of that topic, and it's how can we deal with interruptions. So I think that's something kind of common, especially that maybe we as women struggle with, is what do I do when someone interrupts me? And I feel, that makes me feel weird and it wasn't their turn yet or whatever. How can I deal with that? And then there's the flip side of the coin. What if I need to interrupt someone, but it feels rude and I don't want to come across, wrong? How do I do that? And then how can we disagree? We have a different viewpoint from someone else. How can we disagree with somebody and still maintain our relationship? So we're going to touch on those 3 things today. And let's see. Someone has shared privately. I'm typically underestimated as a woman engineer, not believed from the start, so I have to over prepare. I think that's something that many of us have felt at different times. Yeah. Diversity in the audience can sometimes be something that's we have to navigate. Okay, thank you for sharing your experiences there. So for our 30 minutes, again, we're going to talk about three things. One, what to do when you are interrupted, like in a meeting or a presentation. What to do when you need to be the interrupter, which has its own set of challenges. And then finally, how we can disagree with somebody, but have, some discretion about it. Not, I'm going to use this shorthand, not come across like a jerk in any of those three situations. That's what we want, right? We want to do it. We want to be assertive and stand up for ourselves. But we don't want to lose integrity in the process. And that can be hard to navigate. Okay. So let's talk about interruptions first. And again, we're going to view that from two different perspectives. So first, let's talk about when you get interrupted. So I want to pause and say something here. I feel that interruptions happen. It's a natural part of being in a group setting and having a discussion, and it's not always a personal attack on us if we get interrupted. So that's my 2 cents. I'm not encouraging us to have the mindset, oh no, you didn't, interrupt me. I was still talking. I don't think that should be our mindset. Some people's communication style is just to where they expect to be interrupted themselves and they interrupt and they just view it as friendly banter. So being interrupted in and of itself is fairly neutral, but we know when there's a pattern, I feel. And some of us have probably been up against that where it's like, no, like I'm repeatedly undermined or interrupted by this person in group settings. That's more what I'm talking about here, not an occasional interruption that's kind of part of natural, maybe brainstorming or something. So I just wanted to make that clear from the outset. But if you feel there's like a pattern, so the scenario would be there's a pattern of being interrupted and undermined during a meeting or a presentation, and you want to address it in the moment. So another scenario that we're not going to be talking about in our 30 minutes today would be you want to discuss it privately with the person afterwards. Okay, that might be something you want to do. If you want to have some tools for how to do it in the moment, I have 3 sample sentences that you'll see in just a moment on the screen. You can take these, change them, to be wording that you're more comfortable with. If you don't like, the exact thing I have on the screen, but they go from kind of they get more and more assertive as I reveal them on the slide. You'll see what I mean. So the first one is, oh, Stan, maybe you didn't realize it, but I was still sharing my idea, and then continue talking, continue sharing your idea. So that's one thing is just, you get interrupted and you go, oh, Stan, you might not have realized it, but I was still sharing my idea. So as I was saying, ... you keep going. So that's one idea. Another idea, a little more assertive, I would say, is, oh, hear me out, Julie. I wasn't quite finished with my report. And then keep going. And then the last one, probably most assertive, is, Bill, I listened to your idea when you were speaking earlier, and I'd appreciate you showing me the same courtesy. I wasn't quite finished, and keep going. So you'll notice in each of these, it involves saying the person's name, which may or may not be that significant. I think it's significant. You're letting the person, you're kind of trying to wake them up. And again, what's the scenario? Matter. And you have this attack, but you feel like the person has a habit of doing this and you want to try to nip it in the bud now. So I want to find out from you, what do you think about what I have on the slide right now? Is something can you envision yourself using any of these? Maybe you have done something like this already, but what do you think? Too aggressive, not assertive enough? Okay, got some thumbs up. Maybe the first two, maybe the last is a little too assertive for some of us. Okay. It depends on the context and the history with the person. I think that's an important comment. I'm not saying that these are universal, but I do like that they're direct. I see what Heather says, they're direct and they address the issue. And Krista, I like being assertive when necessary. Okay, good. Yeah, and Cami, it does depend. I think this is case by case. And again, I'm not saying that these, you want to use these all the time, every time, etc. But I always think it's helpful rather than talking about something kind of academically, to actually have some words and maybe even practice saying them out loud. And that will help you get a little more comfortable with it. Okay, good. Yeah, Shakira, being direct is great. You need to be mindful of whom you're speaking to. Great point. Thank you. And tone. Absolutely, Heather. Thank you. Okay, so let's transition just in the interest of time. What about when you need to interrupt? So this could be a meeting. This could also be a presentation where you're supposed to be the one presenting, but someone in the audience or, around the conference table, whatever, has kind of hijacked the presentation or the meeting. So how can you be the interrupter and not look like a jerk? So you probably have some ideas. I'm going to ask you for your ideas momentarily. I'm going to share one with you. And this is from a book called Verbal Judo. So I'm just admitting I'm not the originator of this. So we'll read what that says in just a second. But this book, Verbal Judo, you can find it on Amazon. You can Google it. But it's written by two men. At least one of them, maybe both, have a law enforcement background, and they dealt with hostage negotiations. And so, where tact and the emotional intelligence part, all of the, like, literally lives are in the balance. And so in this book, what the authors offer us is what they say is there's only one way to break in while someone else is talking, to interrupt and have them still like you afterwards, be willing to negotiate, or we're not doing hostage negotiations. Presumably, we're just trying to keep our relationships alive in the boardroom or whatever. But how you want to interrupt because you need to take the power back, but you don't want to look like a jerk while doing so. So you can break in and say something like, again, you say their name, get their attention. Sarah, hold on just a second. I want to make sure I'm understanding you. Are you saying, and then a very brief restatement of what you think they're saying? And then hopefully you get a, like, yeah, and they might do a yeah, but, or whatever, but you got to be willing to kind of overtalk them. So are you saying that, you're concerned about X, Y, and Z? Yeah. Sarah says, yeah. Then you continue by saying, okay, well, given your point about, and then restate their point, let's move the conversation ahead by discussing, and then some next logical step where you want to take the presentation or the meeting. So they're not talking anymore. You've taken back control. You've moved the conversation forward. So what do you think works about this? Whether you've seen this before or not, but saying their name, hold on just a second. I want to make sure I'm understanding you. And then you restate at least a portion of what you feel they're saying, and then march forward. What kind of wisdom do you see in that? And I'll give you a moment. I know it takes a second to think and type. Puts you back in the driver's seat. They feel heard. It's acknowledging them and lets them know they're being heard. Right. You acknowledge their opinion. You can break in and say, I love your ideas. We need to talk it more. Let's schedule a meeting, almost like the parking lot idea. Like, oh, that's interesting. Don't say you, if you really love their idea, you could say that, of course. I would say don't say anything that's not sincere, but you could say that's interesting, and that means anything you want it to mean, basically, right? Oh, that's interesting. That's a little off topic. For now, let's put it on the parking lot. We'll schedule a time to talk about that. Okay, great. You acknowledge them, but control the conversation. That's right. That's really what's going on here. So it's likely if someone has hijacked your meeting or your presentation, that other people in the room, again, whether it's a conference room or an auditorium or whatever, other people are, I'll just pretend I'm the speaker. Other people in the audience are saying, "Oh, why isn't Allison doing something?" But depending on what I do, the audience can totally turn on you in just a second. Like if you did something maybe that was a little more like, if I responded in maybe a little less emotionally intelligent way, like, okay, Sarah, that's really off topic for now. If you check the agenda, that's not what we're here to talk about. So I'm going to get us back on track, but whoa, rude, and immediately the audience who was like, why doesn't Allison do something? Then is like, Allison's a jerk. I can't believe she just treated Sarah that way. Like the audience will turn on you on a dime. And so I don't think this is the only way to do it, but I do think this is a very effective way to do it. Interrupt, say, I want to make sure I'm understanding you. You repeat back to them, you summarize, paraphrase what you think their concern is or what they're saying, and then you plow forward. All right, so that's another tip for you. So I want to find out from you, what other advice do you have about interruptions during meetings or presentations? And I'm fine if you want to, from whatever perspective you want to take this. What do you do when you get interrupted, or what do you do when you need to interrupt someone else? We looked at it from both sides, so I want to make sure we're kind of harnessing the wisdom of the group that we have here. There's almost 60 of us, so what other advice do you have for us just before we move on and talk about disagreeing? Okay, Heather, I think that's really important. Heather brings up, set the stage ahead of time. When you begin presenting, say, please hold your questions until the end, or until we have a break, or we have a parking lot. I'll be using the parking lot if anything comes up that's off agenda or something like that. Great idea. And then it seems less rude when you bring it up again because you've prepared them that that's an option. Okay, tell the audience to ask their questions after the presentation is over. Wonderful. Whitney says, I've heard people in meetings say time check to get the speaker to pause and reassess where they are on the agenda. Okay, that's interesting. I feel like that would be something that like the group would have needed to hear before. So, because if somebody just in the middle of me presenting, if somebody just goes time check, I would not know what that meant. But yeah, if it's like an agreed upon thing, great. Get control of the situation right away. Don't let interrupters go on for too long. You might have to speak with the person privately if you feel like there's a pattern that's meant to undermine. Okay, good. Yeah, and it can help. So Pat says it can help to say, I've got such and such more slides to get through, or 3 more talking points, or, we want to talk about these 4 other counties or projects or whatever it is. And so that's good. Okay, that can help people understand that it's not a personal attack, it's time management. All right, great. And I'm seeing some other ones. Seriously listen, but don't let it derail the whole conversation. Yeah, ask for questions throughout. That's another idea, is to pause, maybe kind of like we're doing right now, because people get ideas and they want to get them out. And so having planned places where you let the group interact with you. Okay, excellent. And then Tracy says, we have a time scheduled for public participation with a 5-minute time limit. Okay, that can be very helpful also. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's move on. Disagreeing with discretion. Okay, so we're going to look at 2 samples here. Disagreeing with discretion means disagreeing with care and diplomacy, which doesn't come naturally to many of us. And I don't mean that as a slam, but a lot of times, like in the moment, or even if we have time to think about it, like in an email, these are the kinds of emails we grieve over, because it's like, I don't like this idea. I do not think this idea has legs, but how do I say that? Maybe to my boss or my peer or whatever. So let's quickly look at an example where I feel that the person has not been successful with the discretion part of their disagreement. So this is Kelly writing to Donald. And she says, this is an email. So in the subject line, it reads, problem with your recruiting proposal. Here it goes. I read your proposal for on-campus recruiting. I think you're making a big mistake to invite employees directly. You ought to go through their supervisors. You don't want to have supervisors upset at the recruiting department as they were with the job shadowing program you instituted without their involvement. Otherwise, it's okay. From Kelly. So, what do you notice there if you had to like specifically call out, like, here's where Kelly went wrong? What would you say? I mean, we could say overall it has maybe a condescending tone or whatever, but if you were maybe mentoring Kelly or coaching her, what, maybe not coaching, but mentoring her, what would you specifically point out as problematic with this email? Yeah, Fernanda, there's no positive thing in the beginning. That's a great way to start, something positive. It sounds like a reprimand. She's not his mother. Suggest an alternative rather than saying, this is a big mistake, and just kind of like, it doesn't sound helpful at all, right? The subject line is a problem. It immediately would put Donald off. Oh, regarding problem. Oh, fabulous, right? Lack of appreciation for the person's work. Excellent. Okay, I see all your comments. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So let's look at a sample rewrite. So we're going to put our anti-sign on that one. We're not going to fall into that. Although it could be tempting, because I'm sure Kelly feels like everything she wrote there is true. I mean, it's her opinion, but to her, it's like, no, time out, Donald. You're about to step on a landmine that it's kind of your habit to step on. So she's trying to save him. We can argue she has pure motives, but it's unlikely to be heard. So let's look at the potential rewrite. Regarding your new recruiting initiative, neutral subject line, right? I like your new proposal for on-campus recruitment. You always have innovative ideas about how to introduce our company to new students. I have one important suggestion. I believe more supervisors would be supportive of your plan to take employees on recruitment trips if you issue the invitations through them. If you invite the employees directly, I worry supervisors might feel undermined, which could work against your plan. To get supervisors to say yes to the invitations, you could offer an incentive, such as first crack at highly qualified candidates. So, I mean, I'll have to say, I think this sample hits almost all of the suggestions that you all had in the chat. Neutral subject line starts with something positive, sincere and positive. I like your proposal. You always have innovative ideas. But rather than basically saying you did something wrong, using the word mistake, she says, I have an important suggestion. So it's her opinion, right? It's not truth, it's her opinion. She thinks it's important. Sorry about my dog, everyone. This is the world we live in. I apologize. But, she says it's a suggestion. And then she's very specific about what she's suggesting and why she thinks it makes sense and will benefit the idea. So what are your thoughts about this? Any comments about the rewrite? Agree, disagree? Much better, says Shayna. Okay. Now you will notice, I mean, I know I did some, shrinking and stuff, but the rewrite is longer. And I teach a lot of writing classes, and, sometimes something I stress is writing in a concise way. I don't think anyone would argue that the rewrite is long. It's not long, it's longer, but to me, it has more, humanity in it. And so sometimes a little bit longer is actually more effective. And so I value conciseness, but we also want to make sure we have that relationship building language. We carve out space in our emails for relationship building. Okay, good. Krista says it sounds a little bit schmoozy at the beginning. Okay, yeah, and if it's not sincere, I never encourage anyone to lie. So if you, let's say you don't really, let's say Kelly doesn't really love the proposal, maybe she can say, thanks for sharing your proposal with me. I have an important suggestion, and I think we're still hitting the mark. And maybe we take away some insincere schmooziness if that was what's happening. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, so we only have 2 minutes. I'm going to skip this. And because I want to share this, the bonus tip. I know this is 3 tips, and we've done 3 tips. This is a 4th one. I added in a bonus, but I wanted this to be specific about presenting. This is one of the best tools I know for preparing for a presentation. So I wanted to be sure and kind of weasel this in for you. So when you think about preparing, something that makes a lot of us nervous is, what if they, meaning the audience, someone in the audience, asks me a question I don't know the answer to? So that's a big topic. But what I tell people as my first piece of advice to help bring anxiety down is to, of course, prepare your presentation so it's thorough. And I have these 3 questions that help me. I think they'll help you prepare a thorough presentation. Here it is. You ask yourself the questions that your audience will be asking. So the first one, we usually have that covered. And what do I mean by that? Just, what is this presentation about? What is she talking about? So most of us kind of nail that. I'm here today to talk to you about ... We got that. The other 2 questions are the things we leave out sometimes. We want to make sure we answer this audience question. So what? Why should I care about this? Make sure you answer so what, and then make sure you answer now what? What should I do based on this information? So there's, what is the presentation about? Why should I care? And what should I do about it now? So if you make sure that your presentation answers those 3 questions, you've thoroughly covered your topic, most likely, and you have lowered the chances of someone needing to ask you a question because you've been thorough from the beginning. There's no way to, of course, eliminate people asking you questions, and questions can be good, but we want to minimize the need for follow-up questions because we've thoroughly covered the foreseeable questions that people have. So think about what am I talking about? Why should people care? And what am I asking or telling them to do about it? And if you do that, you will have covered your topic well. So it is 11:31. Thanks for sticking with me an extra minute. The next session of this full day class is on April 19th. I hope to see you there. Angelique has put the registration link in the chat. Thank you. And thanks for your time, everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Allison. Thank you, everyone. We do have one question in the Q&A.
Oh, yeah.
Roxanne was asking, how do I say I don't know without sounding ignorant?
Right. That's great. Quickly, I think you can build credibility by saying I don't know because it shows you're human, but it needs to be thanks for asking the question, or that's an interesting question. I didn't examine it from that perspective, or I haven't thoroughly researched that. Or you can say, I don't know right now. Can I get your contact information, do some research, and get back to you? Or I'll email the group by this afternoon at 3 or something. It's the follow-up piece is what's important. There's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. No one expects everyone to have all the answers. That's not reasonable. But we have to be willing to get the answer. And so I think that's the important piece to couple with, I don't know, but I'll find out. And then, of course, you must follow through on what you promised you would do. Hopefully that helps, Roxanne.
Thanks, Allison.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Allison, again for this helpful presentation. And to everyone who joins us today, thank you as well. Be sure to check our website at cpshr.us for the slide deck and the recording. We hope you have a great rest of your Friday and an awesome weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.